My Mexican girlfriend convinced me to bring her family to the US. But when I found out what she was planning, I had to call immigration. I always thought I had good judgment. I was raised in a family that valued hard work, honesty, and empathy. I never saw myself as naive, but after everything that happened, I don't know if I was just blinded by love or if I let my emotions take over. 2 years ago, I met Vanessa. It happened at a small cafe near my job, a place I went to almost daily. She was there with a notebook full of scribbled notes and an old laptop that looked like it was on its last breath. I only wanted a quick coffee. But I accidentally spilled my drink near her table and had to apologize while she tried to save her notes. It was one of those moments straight out of a cliché movie. We started talking. And even though the conversation was light at first, something about her pulled me in. She was from Mexico, studying in the US on a student visa, and working part-time as a waitress at a nearby restaurant. From the start, I could tell she was a strong woman, someone who had fought hard to get where she was. Vanessa told me about the situation back home, how the economic crisis forced her family to sell nearly everything so she could study abroad. Our relationship moved quickly, and within months, we were inseparable. She was sweet, attentive, and seemed to share my goals of stability and growth. For the first time in a long time, it felt like I had found someone I could truly build a future with. But things started to change around our first anniversary. Vanessa talked more and more about her family. It was clear she missed them terribly and worried about how much they were struggling in Mexico. She told me her father, Rick, had lost his job. Her mother, Angela, was dealing with health problems, and her 2 younger brothers, Mark and Luke, were struggling to find work. I won't lie. Her story hit me hard. She spoke about them with such love and desperation that I couldn't help but want to help. At first, it was just small things, sending money for food or medicine. But over time, she started hinting at something bigger. One night, over dinner at my apartment, Vanessa brought up the idea of bringing her family to the US on tourist visas. She said they just needed a little help to get started. Some support while they figured things out. She promised it would only be temporary, that in a few months they'd either return to Mexico or find a way to support themselves. At the time, I saw nothing wrong with the idea. I was in love, and if helping her family made her happy, why not? Vanessa had a way of making things sound perfectly reasonable. She assured me it wouldn't be a burden, that her brothers could work to support themselves, and that her father, despite his age, was a hard worker who just needed an opportunity. So I agreed, and that was my first mistake. I didn't mind spending some of my savings to help them get out of that difficult situation. What I didn't know was that my goodwill would soon be completely trampled. Soon, we started the paperwork. Valeria guided her family through the process of applying for tourist visas while I covered the costs of interviews and plane tickets. I even rented a small apartment for them to stay in while they got settled. In total, I spent more than I wanted to admit, but I convinced myself it was an investment in the well-being of the woman I loved. When Valeria's family arrived, everything seemed fine. They were grateful, or at least that's how it looked at first. I welcomed them as if they were my own family, but over time, things began to change. Those first few weeks of supposed harmony were just a facade. After weeks of paperwork, interviews, and coordination, the day finally came when Valeria's family landed in Houston. I remember standing at the airport with a makeshift sign that said, "Welcome," and thinking that, despite all the effort, it was worth it just to see Valeria smile. She was beaming, nervous, and kept talking about how this was the start of a new life for them. Their greetings were warm. Her parents, Amalia and Carlos, seemed grateful, though visibly out of their comfort zone. Her brothers, Mateo and Luis, were more reserved but still hugged me and thanked me for everything I had done at the time. I didn't find anything odd, but looking back, something in their attitude felt off, like they weren't as impressed as I expected, as if, to them, What I saw as a huge act of generosity was just something they took for granted. The first few days were all about adjustments. I took them to the apartment I had rented for them, a small but comfortable place with 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, and a functional kitchen. I felt satisfied with my decision, but little details quickly made me raise an eyebrow. Amalia, Valeria's mother, almost immediately commented on the apartment's size. "It's smaller than I thought," she said while looking around. "But I guess we'll get used to it." Her tone wasn't rude. But it wasn't the gratitude I had expected from someone. I had just helped escape a desperate situation. A few days later, Carlos. Her father asked me for help getting a bigger TV. The 32 screen I had bought apparently wasn't enough. We don't want to take advantage, but we need something to feel more comfortable. Valeria backed him up, saying it was a small request. I let it slide, convincing myself they were just adjusting. After all, they had been through a lot, but that was just the beginning. At first, their request seemed small. Carlos mentioned the TV I bought was too small, and Valeria quickly backed him up, saying it wasn't a big deal to get a larger one. I let it slide, thinking they just needed time to adjust. But soon, small requests turned into bigger ones. Valeria started making decisions without me, like buying new furniture with my credit card. When I confronted her, she shrugged. "Don't worry. It's just temporary. My dad sent me a list of things for the apartment, but we'll pay you back." That never happened. Meanwhile, Mateo and Luis claimed they were looking for jobs, but I rarely saw them leave. When they did talk about work, it was always about cash-only jobs, construction, restaurants, anything under the table. It made sense, since they had tourist visas. But when I cautiously brought up the idea of them returning before overstaying, Valeria snapped. "Why would they go back? There's more opportunity here. It's not as hard as you think." Something in her tone made me uneasy, but I brushed it off. The turning point came about a month later. We were all at my place for dinner when I overheard Mateo whispering something to Luis about the plan. It was quiet, almost like they didn't want me to hear. When I asked what they meant, they laughed nervously and said it was about work. Valeria waved it off, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. By then, my savings had taken a serious hit. I was paying for their rent, extra purchases, and all their little emergencies. Every time I tried to bring up limits, Valeria would either distract me or guilt-trip me about her family struggles. Months passed. What was supposed to be a temporary arrangement started to feel permanent. I kept telling myself things were fine, that I was just being paranoid. But deep down, I knew the truth. I was being used. It became obvious that Valeria's family had no plans to return to Mexico. The first real sign was when Carlos, her father, casually mentioned looking into visa extensions or asylum. He knew it wasn't easy. But when I directly asked if they were considering going back after their 6-month visa expired, he just shrugged. "We'll see how things are when the time comes. No need to rush into decisions." The way he said it made my stomach turn, like leaving was never an option. Meanwhile, Mateo and Luis started disappearing for long hours. Valeria insisted they were working to help with expenses. But I never saw a dime of what they supposedly earned. I was still paying for everything, the apartment, food, even extra phone lines Valeria set up for them. When I told her these expenses were getting out of control, she just said they just need a little more time. Then came the request that floored me. One evening, Valeria casually suggested I help her brothers find better jobs, despite their tourist visas. "You know people," she said. "Just ask around. They're good workers. They just need a chance." I reminded her that this was illegal. She rolled her eyes. "Why are you so rigid about this? Everyone does it." That was my breaking point. Until then, I had done everything I could to help within legal and ethical boundaries. But now she wanted me to cross a line. Worse, she didn't seem to care. And then Valeria changed. She became distant, cold. Every time I brought up concerns, she dodged the conversation or accused me of being selfish. How can you talk about limits when my family is here because of you? Now you want to turn your back on them. She made me feel guilty, and I kept giving in. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. One day, I stopped by their apartment to drop off groceries. When I walked in, Mateo and Luis were whispering. They didn't notice me at first, and I caught a chilling sentence. We just need Valeria to convince him to take the next step. Once he does, we're set. They froze when they saw me. Something was very, very wrong. Mateo and Luis quickly changed the subject when they saw me. I asked what they were talking about, and they just mumbled something about work. I didn't push, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. That night, Valeria came over, acting like everything was normal. I tried to subtly ask about her family's long-term plans, but she dodged the question as usual. Everything in its time, don't worry so much, love. But I was worried. I couldn't get their conversation out of my head. That's when I decided to take serious action. I secretly installed a voice recorder in their apartment. I felt guilty, like I was betraying Valeria's trust. But deep down, I knew I was the one being manipulated. Meanwhile, things between us kept getting worse. She spent more time with her family, barely with me. When she was at my place, she was glued to her phone, constantly texting or taking hushed calls in the other room. Then she started pushing the idea of us moving in together, closer to her family. I don't think it's the right time, I said one night, trying to stand firm. Her reaction was immediate, dramatic. Why not? If you really love me, this wouldn't be a problem. It's obvious you don't want to help like you say you do. That stung. After everything I had done for them, she was making me the villain. That night, I finally admitted it to myself. Our relationship wasn't about love anymore. It was about her needs, her family's problems. I was just a means to an end. Few weeks passed, and the tension kept growing. She spent even less time with me, and our conversations became robotic. She was always on edge, checking her phone non-stop, taking long calls on the balcony. If I asked who she was talking to, she got defensive. Mom, what's wrong with being worried about my family? Despite my suspicions, I played along. If she or her family knew I was onto them, they'd just be more careful. I needed real proof. Finally, the day came. I locked myself in my office, plugged in the recorder, and started listening. At first, it was just small talk, discussions about meals, errands, day-to-day plans. But then, on the 10th recording, I heard something that made my blood run cold. On the 10th recording, I heard something that made my heart stop. It was a hushed conversation between Mateo and Luis. The audio wasn't perfect, but I caught enough to send a chill down my spine. Mateo, he's almost ready. Valeria says it's just a matter of getting him to sign those papers. And if he doesn't, Luis asked, he will. She knows how to handle him. Besides, after everything he spent, he won't say no now. I kept listening, hoping for more details, but they changed the subject quickly. Still, those few sentences confirmed my worst fears. They were planning something, and Valeria was at the center of it. I went through more recordings over the next few days, each one worse than the last. In one, Valeria's mother, Amalia, was talking to her husband, Carlos. We can't wait much longer. Valeria has to pressure him to sign. If he won't, we'll have to find another option, he will. Carlos assured her. She says he's convinced it's all to help the family. That poor idiot doesn't even know what he's getting into. I froze. Sign. Convinced. What exactly was I agreeing to? Then I found the conversation that shattered any remaining doubts. Valeria was talking to her mother. explaining how she planned to make me sign some documents. I just have to present it like it's temporary, something that won't affect him directly. It's a simple contract. He won't even read it all. And you're sure he'll go for it? Hammaly asked. Of course. He loves me. He always does what I ask. I'll tell him it's for me, that if he doesn't sign, I'll be devastated. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Everything I had done for Valeria and her family. Every sacrifice was part of a carefully crafted plan. This wasn't a desperate family looking for help. It was a calculated scheme to use me as a tool for them to stay in the country. That night, I didn't sleep. I listened to the recordings over and over, piecing together the full extent of their deception, the papers they were pushing me to sign. A sham marriage contract. It would grant Valeria legal residency and, by extension, open pathways for her whole family to stay. It all made sense now. Why she had been pressuring me to move in together. Why she was pushing to formalize our relationship. Beyond the shock, I felt rage. Humiliation. I had been a pawn in their game from the very start, but I wouldn't confront Valeria just yet. I needed a plan. I needed to plan my next move carefully. One thing was clear. I wasn't going to let them get away with it. If they thought they could manipulate and use me, they were dead wrong. Update for after listening to the recordings and confirming Valeria and her family had been playing me all along. I spent days deciding what to do. The anger and betrayal burned inside me, but I knew I had to be smart. If I confronted them too soon, I'd be in a vulnerable position. I played along while keeping my distance, waiting for the right moment. Valeria, oblivious to what I knew, kept acting as if nothing was wrong. She was as sweet as ever, even bringing up the idea of getting married to secure the family's stability. Her audacity stunned me. How could she lie to my face like that? That's when I decided to gather more proof. I hired an immigration lawyer to understand exactly what I was up against. He explained that if I signed any fraudulent documents, I could face serious legal consequences. Not just Valeria and her family, but me too. His words confirmed what I had feared. I was being used, not just emotionally, but legally. Marrying her under these circumstances would be a clear case of immigration fraud. Something authorities take very seriously. With my next steps clear, I took action. That morning, while Valeria and her family went out like they did almost every weekend, I went to a legal aid center. I filed an official complaint detailing everything that had happened. This wasn't just about getting justice. It was about protecting myself. I didn't want to escalate things too quickly, but I needed to cover all my bases. My lawyer advised me to be cautious, but also to act before things spiraled further out of control. After leaving his office, I went straight to immigration authorities and submitted all the evidence I had gathered, including the recordings. I knew this could complicate things for me, but I had no choice. I needed to prove that I was being manipulated and set up for immigration fraud. That evening, I felt a sense of relief, but also unease. I couldn't just sit and wait. I had to move fast before Valeria made her next move. Then, an opportunity presented itself. Valeria invited me to a special dinner with her family. It was an obvious attempt at emotional manipulation, and I knew it. Instead of refusing outright, I told her I'd rather stay home, but that we could talk later. As soon as they left, I searched their apartment. I combed through papers and personal belongings, looking for anything useful. Then I found it, a sealed envelope from a law office. Inside was a pre-filled marriage contract with my name on it and a blank space for my signature. A handwritten note was attached. Signed when you're ready. My blood boiled. They had been planning this all along. I had been nothing more than a pawn in their scheme. Oh, I felt like a fool. But that feeling was quickly replaced by something else: determination. This wasn't just betrayal. It was survival. I wasn't just going to break up with Valeria. I was going to expose them. That night when they returned home, I was ready. I confronted them calmly, keeping my voice steady, but with full conviction that I wouldn't let them get away with this. They tried to deny everything, but the evidence was undeniable. That's when Valeria finally dropped the act. Her face hardened. No more sweetness. No more fake concern. Instead, she fixed me with a cold stare. "Are you serious right now?" she hissed. "You don't know what you're getting yourself into. Just walk away before you make things worse for yourself." But I didn't care. I was the one in control now. Final update. After that confrontation, everything changed. But not in the way I expected. The tension in the house grew unbearable. In the following weeks, Valeria tried every trick in the book to get me to retract my complaint. But I refused. If I didn't act now, they would walk free, and that was not an option. Immigration authorities took my report seriously. What started as a simple fraud investigation soon became something much bigger. An agent contacted me after reviewing my evidence and revealed something shocking. Valeria's family wasn't just committing immigration fraud. Her brothers, Mateo and Luis, had ties to something far more dangerous. A deeper investigation uncovered their connection to the Cartel de Sinaloa, one of the most feared criminal organizations in Mexico. Authorities found evidence linking them to human trafficking, drug smuggling, and weapons distribution. They were also involved in extortion schemes. I was stunned. I knew something was wrong, but I never imagined it ran this deep. As the investigation intensified, authorities began tracking their movements and connections within the country. It didn't take long for everything to fall apart. Mateo and Luis were arrested during a surprise raid on a warehouse suspected of cartel activity. Several members of the organization were caught, including Valeria's brothers. But the revelations didn't stop there. Authorities discovered that Valeria's family had been actively helping smuggle cartel members into the U.S. illegally. Authorities discovered that Valeria's family had planned to use our marriage to secure legal residency for more cartel members. The final blow came when prosecutors linked Valeria and her parents to her brother's criminal activities. During questioning, Valeria tried to downplay her involvement, but the evidence was overwhelming. In the end, Valeria, her parents, and her brothers were all arrested. The trial was swift and decisive. Mateo and Luis were sentenced to long prison terms for drug trafficking, human smuggling, and other cartel-related crimes. It was a devastating loss for the organization. As they lost several key members in the U.S., Valeria and her parents, however, were deported immediately because of their ties to organized crime and proven immigration fraud. They were banned from ever returning to the U.S., their visas were revoked, and any future attempt to re-enter would result in immediate arrest. Their dream of staying in the U.S. had completely collapsed. At first, I expected the legal process to be slow, but I was surprised at how quickly the system acted. During the proceedings, I never saw Valeria in person. When I heard about her arrest, I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. It had been a cruel game, but in the end, the truth came to light. The worst part? I never truly understood why she did it. The woman I once saw as my confidant was just another pawn in a web of deception. In the months that followed, I received several letters from Valeria from a prison in Mexico. She begged for forgiveness, pleaded for me to reconsider my complaint, but it was far too late. Couldn't and wouldn't forgive her. Justice had been served, but the damage was done. Looking back, I still wonder how I didn't see the truth sooner. In the end, my life returned to normal. I don't regret my decisions, even if they were difficult. But I'll never forget what happened. The person I trusted most turned out to be my biggest mistake. This experience taught me a brutal lesson. Sometimes, the people you love the most are the ones who will betray you the hardest. Valeria and her family thought they could use me, but In the end, I was the one who walked away victorious, and their plan. It crumbled in the most humiliating way possible.